You're listening to the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. On today's episode of the podcast, we review the Test series between England and New Zealand. It's the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast, and let's get started. Let's have a look at the series results in this Test series between England and New Zealand. The first Test match at Lord's, the match was drawn, and Devon Conway was named man of the match. The second Test match from Edgbaston, New Zealand won by 8 wickets and won the series 1-0. Matt Henry was named man of the match, and Devon Conway and Rory Burns were named man of the series. Let's have a look at some of the key stats from this Test series between England and New Zealand. New Zealand have now won 3 Test series in England. They've won in 1986, 1-0, they won in 1999, 2-1, and they won in 2021, 1-0. 13 consecutive bilateral Test series without a defeat for England at home before the series loss to New Zealand. It is also the first Test series defeat at home for Joe Root as captain. England's last Test series loss at home came against Sri Lanka in 2014 when they lost 1-0. 122, England's second innings total at Edgbaston, is their lowest at home against New Zealand. The previous lowest total at home against New Zealand was 126 at Edgbaston in 1999. 5 players with a score in the 80s in the second Test match, the first such instance in Test cricket. It is also only the third Test match to record 5 scores in the 80s. The previous instances were during the Australia versus South Africa Test match at the SCG in 1964 and England versus Australia Test match at Old Trafford. 88-10, England's win-loss record when they made 300 plus in the first innings of a Test match at home. The 8-wicket loss to New Zealand in the second Test match is only the third defeat for England after scoring 300 plus in the first innings of a home Test in the last 20 years. 0. The number of New Zealand players to have won the Player of the Series award in their debut Test series before Devon Conway. Conway is also the second after Sourav Ganguly to win the award in their debut Test series in England. 306 runs for Devon Conway in this Test series, the second most by a New Zealander in their Test debut. Stewie Dempster leads the list with 341 runs scored during the 4-match series against England in 1930. Conway's tally of 306 runs is the 5th most by a visiting opener in a Test series on debut in England. 3 instances of New Zealand winning away from home despite conceding 300 and more runs in the first innings of a Test match. The Edgbaston win is also the 9th instance of New Zealand winning a Test, even giving away 300 plus runs in the first innings of a Test match. Those were the key stats from the England and New Zealand Test series. Let's have a look at England's overall series performances with both bat and ball in this Test series against New Zealand. We'll start with their batsmen. Burns, 238 runs, Sibley, 103, Root, 97, Pope, 84, Lawrence, 81, Crawley, 21, and Bracey, 8. That's how the England batsmen performed in this Test series. England's batting was poor and pathetic in this Test series against New Zealand. It really was a very poor performance, not good enough at Test match level, inexperienced batting group, and it showed in this series against New Zealand. England's batting has been a concern for a while now, and they've had many problems with their batting, and it definitely showed in this series against New Zealand. To me, this batting lineup from England's lacking confidence and it's lacking self-belief, lack of fight, lack of mental toughness and resilience. There's none of that in this batting lineup from England. Weren't disciplined and patient enough with their batting. They're missing some key players, yes. Ben Stokes, Josh Buttler, Johnny Bairstow, Sam Curran, Moeen Ali, Chris Wokes have all been rested because of the IPL and didn't play in this series. So they were missing them. They were missing some key players, but overall their batting was poor. It was terrible. Just not good enough. It's unacceptable. And if you're an England supporter, you'll be absolutely angry about this performance from the England batsmen. It's just not good enough. Not good enough at all. Now, some of the batsmen who played in this series, their spots are seriously in doubt for the India Test series and potentially the Ashes squad. I'm talking about Rory Burns, Dom Sibley, Zach Crawley, Ollie Pope, Dan Lawrence, and James Bracey. Well, we'll start with Rory Burns. Let's talk about his series and how did he go about things in this series. Well, he scored 100 at Lords and 80-odd in the second test at Edgbaston. After being dropped in India, he has done well in bouncing back. But these scores don't make a summer. Needs to back it up and score runs on a consistent basis, Rory Burns, because he's had a pretty good series, Rory Burns. 238 runs, an average of 59, highest score of 132 in the series. So he's batted well. But the challenge for him now is to back it up in the India series, up against quality bowlers that India have, who are going to test him and his technique. He really needs to stand up and score runs on a consistent basis for England. His spot is definitely not, it's in some doubt, obviously. He really needs to get on with it and score some runs, because otherwise he may be dropped from this England test side. Dom Sibley, he scored a good half-century at Lords in the second innings, 60 not out, but he hasn't been scoring runs on a consistent basis for England. So the challenge for Dom Sibley is to really go back and look at his game, look to improve, because he's really, staring down the barrel of being out of this test side for England. If he doesn't score runs on a consistent basis, he's probably out of this side. His spot is definitely in doubt going forward. Zach Crawley, not a great series from him, averaging 5 in the series. Highest score of 17, which came in the second innings of the batting collapse in the second test match at Edgbaston. His spot is seriously in doubt. He's terribly out of form. He's got the talent, Zach Crawley, but he's wasting that talent at the moment. This series was an opportunity for him to stand up and score runs on a consistent basis for England. Unfortunately, he hasn't done that. And he's battling with himself. You can see that when he's batting. He's in two minds. He's battling his mental side and his physical side in terms of, do I play at the ball? Do I leave it? Do I play this shot? He's in two minds, Zach Crawley. And he really needs to sort out his mental side of his game, because his technique is letting him down a little bit, but also his mental side is letting him down as well. So he really needs to improve that going forward. His spot is in doubt. Ollie Pope, his spot is also in doubt. Gets starts but doesn't go on with it and gets out, which isn't good enough from Ollie Pope. Ollie Pope, I don't think in the last few innings he's played in Test cricket, he hasn't got a Test match 50. It's not good enough from Ollie Pope. He needs to score runs on a consistent basis. He needs to transfer his good county cricket form into Test cricket, because at the moment he's not doing that. So his spot is seriously in doubt. Dan Lawrence, he's got the talent, and we saw that at Edgbaston in the first innings when he scored 81 not out. He's got the talent, Dan Lawrence, I should say, but he's not scoring the runs on a consistent basis. He needs to score runs on a consistent basis, Dan Lawrence. He just needs to back up these performances. And James Bracey, well, he struggled in this series, averaging 2, made 2 ducks. Obviously, the first innings at Lords, he got out for a duck. The first innings at Edgbaston, he got out for a duck. He struggled in this series with both bat and the gloves. His inexperience as a wicketkeeper showed in this series. He's found the transition from first-class cricket to Test cricket difficult, doesn't feel comfortable at this level, and we clearly saw that. And already his fate has been sealed. Won't be a part of the India series, I don't think. Butler will obviously return and take the gloves for England. He was mentally gone in the second Test match. You could see that with James Bracey. He was mentally gone. The shot he played off Asjaz Patel, the sweep shot, got a bit of glove, back onto the stumps. You could see he was mentally gone. And he's just not up to the level at Test match cricket, unfortunately. I do feel for Bracey, obviously. You don't want to see players struggle like that. But really, the transition from first-class cricket to Test cricket is a bit too hard for him. Probably he needs a bit more time in county cricket, and hopefully he can come back a better player. So all of those batsmen spots are seriously in doubt for the India series. Now, all of these batsmen, Burns, Sibley, Crawley, Pope, Lawrence, they're all averaging 30 in Test cricket, which isn't good enough. Rory Burns is averaging 33, Sibley's averaging 30.78, Crawley's averaging 29.33, Pope's averaging 31.50, Lawrence is averaging 29.90. So all of their averages are touching around about that 30 mark, which isn't good enough. You need to be better than that. And all of these batsmen's averages in first-class cricket are, very different to their test match stats. Burns is averaging 42.72, Sibley's averaging 39.05, Crawley's averaging 31.44, Pope's averaging 50.86, Lawrence is averaging 38.48. So their first-class averages are very different to their test match averages. So they can't seem to transfer their first-class cricket form into test cricket, those batsmen. So that's the challenge for them. They need to transfer that form. At the moment, they're not doing that. Compared to New Zealand's batsmen, they're all averaging 40 plus, whereas this England side, they're all averaging 30. The only one who's got the highest average in the whole team is Joe Root. He's averaging 48.68. And he's by far England's best batsman out of this current batting lineup. He's their best batsman. So really, that tells you a story in terms of the differences between all of those batsmen's averages, that they're not transferring the form from first-class cricket into test cricket. And that's the problem for England. So how many chances do you give these players who have played a lot of test matches now? Burns has played 25 matches, Sibley's played 20, Crawley's played 14, Pope's played 19, Lawrence has played 7. So how many chances do you give them? You've got to draw the line somewhere. They've played some cricket now. They haven't performed to their potential. Where do you draw the line? Joe Root and Chris Silverwood, who are now the selectors of this England team, they need to draw the line somewhere, because at the moment they're not doing well. And they've got to make some changes, because other batsmen are waiting to take their place in this test side. Darwin Malan, Hamid, Mark Stoneman, Adam Lyth, James Vince, Keaton Jennings have all had good county cricket form this season. Malan, he's only played one game in county cricket, but he scored 199 in his first innings. Hamid, 515 runs. Stoneman, 397. Lyth, 629 runs. Vince, 473. Keaton Jennings, 431 runs. So all of those batsmen are scoring runs in county cricket. So all of these batsmen may return if England want to go in a different direction with their batting for the India Test Series and potentially their Ashes squad as well. So all those batsmen, Burns, Sibley, Crawley, Pope, Lawrence, they really need to knuckle down and work hard, because at the moment, their spots are seriously in doubt. Also, England's partnerships in this series were lacking as well. Only 6 50-run partnerships in the series. 93 for the third wicket between Burns and Root at Lords, 80 for the third wicket between Root and Burns at Lords, 72 for the first wicket between Burns and Sibley at Edgbaston, 66 for the 8th wicket between Lawrence and Wood at Edgbaston, 63 for the 7th wicket between Burns and Robertson at Lords, 52 for the 10th wicket between Anderson and Burns at Lords. 6 50-run partnerships. It just shows where England's at with their batting. That's just poor. No 100-run partnerships whatsoever in that, in this test series, I should say. Absolutely poor from England. So there's a lot of work to do from Joe Root and Chris Silverwood to get this batting group bouncing back and batting well at test level. Otherwise, it's going to be a long summer ahead with India still to come and the Ashes later on this year against Australia. I want to touch on quickly about Chris Silverwood's expectations from this England squad. Now, he made some comments before this New Zealand Test Series. He said in those comments, "We want to travel to Australia fitter, faster and leaner, more ready than ever before for the Ashes in Australia." He also said, "We have the greatest respect for our opponents in New Zealand and India. To get to where we want to be against Australia, we have to perform well in these test matches." He then went on to say, "It's not that we rate Australia more than anyone else. We understand that we have two of the best teams in the world in front of us. Play well against them, play to our abilities. It will help us win the Ashes as well." So there's no secret that England are focusing on the Ashes and the T20 World Cup later on this year. England do this every Ashes series. They always look too far ahead and focus on the Ashes. So everyone at the ECB, everyone in the England team management would be saying, "Oh, it's the Ashes. We've got to prepare everything for the Ashes right now." It's June. The Ashes are not until December. I'm pretty sure they understand that, England. there's no point worrying about the Ashes in June. They don't happen for another few months until December. Why don't you just focus on the series against India, Chris Silverwood? That's what you really need to focus on, because that could be an embarrassing series for England. They could lose that series 5-0, and that's going to be a very tough pill to swallow in terms of the next series that England will go to, which will be the Ashes after that series against India. So for Chris Silverwood, you've got to focus on, trying to get the team better. There's no point in worrying about the Ashes right now. The Ashes are not until, as I said before, until December. It is now June. Why don't you, and as I said before, you've got to focus on the present moment, which is right now. You've got to focus about how to try and get the team back and playing good cricket again after this tough series loss to New Zealand. And also, you've got to focus about trying to get better and trying to win the series against India later on this English summer. You've got to think about the present moment right now. You can't think too far ahead about the T20 World Cup, about the Ashes, because they haven't happened yet. That's the problem that England face in terms of their priorities. The ECB on and off the field need to sort out their priorities. What is it? Are we all in for Test match cricket, or we're all in for limited overs cricket? Because at the moment, their priorities are not right. Because clearly, there's something wrong there with their priorities. The ECB really need to sort out their priorities right now. Also, the English management has been poor as well. So England's rotation policy has been managed poorly. Obviously, players aren't robots and do need a rest to improve their mental health and well-being, as we all know, which is a big problem in cricket and also in our society. If you're struggling with your mental health, please seek help. There are various organisations out there that can help you. On the podcast, we did a video on mental health in cricket, so I would suggest to anyone who wants to check that out, please do, because it has some very good information in that video. And if you're struggling, that may help with your mental health battle and obviously make you realise that, seeking help is the best option, and it always is. So I can understand what England are doing in terms of making sure their players' health and well-being and mental health are being looked after. But it seems to me England have one rule for everyone in terms of their rotation policy. If you are rested, you can't play. So in terms of Stokes, Butler, Bairstow, Ali, Woke, Sam Curran, they've all been rested because of the IPL. Obviously, Ben Stokes is injured, obviously. But all of them are playing T20 Blast cricket for their counties. They're meant to be resting. If you're resting, it means you can't play any cricket because you're resting. It just shows poor management from the England management on their rotation policy. Look at Trent Boult, for example, on New Zealand's side. He was in doubt to play this Test series against England, but he played the second Test match. He took responsibility for his own career, and he said, I want to play this second Test match, because if I don't play, I'm not going to be in the best frame of mind and form heading into the WTC final, which is the biggest game that New Zealand will ever play in their whole cricketing history, and he wants to play that game to win the WTC final for New Zealand. He didn't leave New Zealand until the squad left for England. So his departure from New Zealand was delayed because he went to visit his family. And obviously he took that upon himself, Trent Boult, to say, I want to play. Whereas the England players, they don't have that choice because the ECB is saying, no, you've been rested, you can't play. But they're playing T20 Blast cricket. So that doesn't make sense to me. If you have an arrest, it means you don't play any cricket at all. So they would have played this series anyway because they're playing T20 Blast cricket. So they're undermining their own policy, the ECB. So the ECB really need to sort out their management in terms of their rotation policy because it's poor. Absolutely poor it is. So they really need to sort that out going forward. Clearly for England overall, their priorities in terms of where they want to go with the Test team and their management is poor. So they really need to sort that out, England. That's why we're seeing these poor batting performances, and that's why we're seeing England play poorly, because the management on and off the field is not in a good frame of mind. There are different messages, I should say, that players are receiving from the management in terms of rotation, all that stuff. The priorities are definitely out of whack. They're clearly focusing on the Ashes and the T20 World Cup. They should be really focusing on the next Test series, which is against India, because they really need to play well in that series, England. Because at the moment, it looks like it's going to be a 5-0 series win to India if they don't really change things around now. So their priorities are clearly out of whack, and they just need to sort themselves out, the ECB, and the whole England team needs to sort themselves out as well. So overall, their batting in this series was poor, disappointing, underwhelming. It was pathetic. Clearly not up to it at Test match level, some of these batsmen. And it showed in their performances in this series. Let's have a look at England's bowlers and their overall performance in this series against New Zealand. Robinson took 7 wickets, Broad and Wood took 6 wickets, 3 wickets for Stone and Anderson, and a wicket each for Lawrence and Root. That's how the England bowlers performed in this Test series against New Zealand. I thought England's bowling was quite good in this series. England's bowling was the one positive from this very disappointing Test series. They stood up and took wickets and bowled well in this series, but unfortunately the batsmen couldn't repay them for that hard work. Anderson and Broad bowled well, taking wickets, but didn't have the significant impact with the ball like they always have done. It was England's other bowlers who impressed the most: Ollie Robinson, Mark Wood, and Ollie Stone. All of them took wickets and stood up for England in this series. They are the future of England's bowling group going forward when Anderson and Broad do eventually retire from Test cricket. So England will be very confident in terms of replacing Broad and Anderson when they do retire, knowing that Robinson, Wood, and Stone can definitely stand up and take wickets for England going forward when Anderson and Broad do eventually retire from Test cricket, which is going to happen. Don't know when, but it is going to happen. So England are very confident going forward without Broad and Anderson that Robinson, Wood and Stone, as I said before, can get the job done. Overall, I thought England's bowling was quite good in this series. They really stood up, bowled their hearts out at times, really put New Zealand under pressure at times. Unfortunately, their batsmen couldn't repay them for that hard work, which was the disappointing factor. Overall, it was a disappointing series from England. A lot of work to do to bounce back and start playing some good Test match cricket. The batsmen have to have a good hard look at themselves and will be doing a lot of soul searching to improve going forward. Let's have a look at New Zealand's overall series performances with both bat and ball in this Test series against England. We'll start with their batsmen. Conway, 306 runs. Taylor, 127. Nichols, 105. Young, 90. Latham, 88. Blundell, 34. Watling, 16. Williamson, 14. De Granholm, 9. And Mitchell, 6. That's how the batsmen performed for New Zealand in this Test series against England. I thought New Zealand's batting was superb in this series. They batted very well. They're an experienced lineup. They've got a lot of experience and class players in their side who all stood up, did their role, contributed nicely to the batting effort, and all scored runs and made a valuable contribution to New Zealand in this series. Devon Conway was superb, 200 on debut at Lords, looked comfortable at Test level, really led this batting attack, or batting lineup, I should say, for New Zealand. And the other thing about New Zealand's batsmen, they showed a lot of patience, discipline, mental toughness and resilience. All of the key qualities you need as a Test match batsman. They've all got that. They were patient at times, they were disciplined, they were mentally tough, they found a way to get through those tough periods with the bat when England were bowling very well at times in this Test series. They showed a lot of resilience, not giving up, always fighting. And that's what this New Zealand side have made themselves. They're a team who are fighters. They're resilient. They really don't give up. And they find a way to get through tough periods with bat and ball. And they've certainly done that in this series, especially with the bat. All their batsmen applied themselves well to English conditions. They batted well to different situations that were thrown in front of them in these 2 Test matches, played accordingly to those situations as well. They backed up partnerships well. Batsmen got in and made big scores. All of the batsmen contributed nicely in this series, all of them playing for the team and not for themselves, which is a key point to point out there. And it shows that this New Zealand team are all for the team. They're a team who play for the team, New Zealand, and that's great to see. They all know their roles in this batting lineup and executed their roles well in this series with the bat. Kane Williamson didn't really have a big significant impact with the bat in this series. Only played the one test match at Lord's, missed out the second test due to a elbow injury, which has been plaguing him for some time. It just flared up again. But it was great to see the other batsmen step up in his absence. And that's the great thing about this New Zealand team, that everyone who comes into this team contributes nicely to the team. And that's what the other batsmen did in the absence of Williamson. So overall, their batting was superb, much better than England's. You know, they outbatted England. They showed England how to bat in this test series, and they did. They batted superbly, New Zealand, and their batsmen will be very proud of their efforts in this series against England. And they'll be very confident going into the WTC final against India that they can score the runs up against a quality Indian attack and hopefully for New Zealand win the WTC final. Let's have a look at New Zealand's bowlers and their overall series performance with the ball in this test series against England. Southey and Wagner took 7 wickets each, 6 wickets for Henry and Bolt, 4 wickets for Patel, and 3 wickets for Jamieson. That's how the New Zealand bowlers performed in this series. And their bowling was superb, New Zealand. I thought they bowled brilliantly in this series. They showed their quality with the ball in this series, New Zealand. The first test match at Lord's especially, and in the second test match at Edgbaston. Especially in England's second innings when they dismissed them for 122 in that batting collapse. They bowled superbly in that display of bowling. Their lines and lengths were consistent and relentless at times. They executed their plans well with the ball, which created pressure on the England batsmen, which created chances and wickets for New Zealand. And this bowling attack from New Zealand is a very good attack. High quality, Southey, Wagner, Henry, Bolt, Patel, Jamieson, all great bowlers who've done their roles for this New Zealand bowling attack. And this series would give them lots of confidence going into the WTC final against India, knowing that their bowlers, New Zealand bowlers, that they can take the wickets and hopefully get, India in trouble in that WTC final with their batsmen and put them under pressure, because this New Zealand attack is such a quality attack, and they can definitely do that in the World Test Championship final against India. And this series will give them that confidence going forward. But overall, they bowled pretty well. They put England under pressure. England couldn't handle the pressure. They cracked under the pressure. And New Zealand, their bowlers are very, very, very good. Overall, it was a good series win from New Zealand. They dominated this series from start to finish and deserved their series win. If the rain didn't affect the test match at Lord's, they would have won the series 2-0. But they'll be very happy with a 1-0 series win. Everyone contributed well with both bat and ball in this series, and it showed in their performances. This series will give them confidence to potentially win the WTC final against India. What are my thoughts on the series? It was a one-sided test series in favour of New Zealand. They played the better cricket and deserved their series victory, their first at England since 1999. This will boost their confidence ahead of the WTC final against India. For England, it was a disappointing series from start to finish. A lot of work for them to do ahead of the test series against India. If they keep playing the way they did against New Zealand, it could be a tough series against India and against Australia for the Ashes later on this year. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. Be sure to subscribe and click the bell to get the latest episodes of the podcast. And like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. Until next time, keep safe and bye for now.